Welcome back, uplifting life partners, to Marriage Mastery Simplified, cultivating extraordinary connections. The podcast dedicated to helping you build a stronger, more joyful, and resilient marriage. I'm your host, Ron Simplified Myers. Let's ignite possibilities together. This is our Marriage Builder Sunday episode, and today we're diving deep into a topic that's both challenging and incredibly rewarding: letting go of expectations and appreciating them for who they are, embracing your partner's imperfections. See, we all walk into marriage with a picture in our heads, don't we? A sort of ideal partner, a perfect spouse, who will complete us in every way. And then reality sets in. The quirks, the habits, the things that weren't on our ideal checklist, they suddenly become apparent. And for many, this is where the friction begins. But what if I told you that embracing these very imperfections is not just a path to acceptance, but a secret weapon for a truly thriving marriage? See, we're going to start by talking about expectations and how they can actually be a trap. See, they're a double-edged sword. On one hand, healthy expectations like mutual respect, kindness, and commitment, they're foundational. But often, we project unrealistic expectations onto our partners. We expect them to always know what we're thinking, to fulfill every emotional need, to be perfect reflections of our desires. See, I remember an incident with my niece. She came to me and she said, "Uncle, I'm bored." Now, you know, at that moment, her desires, her wishes for me was to fix this huge problem that she was now facing in her life. Well, I know she wasn't prepared for the response. I said, "If you're bored, it's because you're boring." And her mouth just dropped open and you could see the shock on her face. She said, "Uncle." Now, this is where that miscommunication takes place, where a person can take it personally and believe I was attacking this poor, innocent child, which I know were the thoughts that were going through her head. Yet, from my perspective, it was never meant to be an attack, but the opportunity to teach a life lesson. I continue by saying, someone convinced you that it is the world's responsibility to entertain you? See, if you're bored, it's because you're boring. That's your job to entertain yourself, not wait for someone else to do it. So you go and figure out how to entertain yourself. Now, I can go in many directions with this illustration. Well, I won't, but I do want to make one point here. And this is an area I'm adamant that I want to share and that you grab hold of. If you are a person that blame others for your issues, stop. That's why they're called your issues. No one is responsible for your emotions, and that includes making you happy. That's your responsibility. I've shared this with many that blame their partner for their happiness. Your happiness and joy remain with the one person where it should be: you. Why would you ever want to give or believe someone has that kind of power over your life? I want you to think about it for a second. If I decided today to be a jerk and my objective was to make you mad or unhappy, would you believe that's okay to allow that to happen? You're going to give me that kind of power in that moment, in your day, for your life? Also, isn't it true at the same time that your partner can do everything you ask of them, and you still have the ability to be sad, frustrated, depressed, or whatever emotions you choose? Why? Because you control your emotions by the stories, the perspectives you have of what's taking place. Your emotions are attached to those stories. So be very mindful of the stories that you create in your mind. By the way, my niece, she did cause me to laugh one day when I told her to go play with her imaginary friends. Her response was, "They're mad and they're not talking to me." Now, I probably shouldn't have laughed, but I couldn't help it. I asked her, "What did you do to make your imaginary friends not want to talk to you?" Now, I forgot her response, but I do know we got through it without staying in a negative emotional arena. But that's a clear example of what we're talking about. A miscommunication, or someone has some unrealistic expectations in those relationships. Now, what is the root of disappointment? Often, our disappointment, it isn't about their action itself, but about the gap between what happened and what we expected to happen. And in a lot of instances, the breakdown is this thing called the burden of perfection. When we hold our partners to an impossible standard of perfection, we're not only setting them up for failure, but we're also setting ourselves up for constant disappointment and resentment, because no one can ever meet that bar, including most times ourselves. So let's work on shifting your perspective from flaw finding to appreciation. I know. So Ron, how do we do that? How do we break free from this expectation trap that you're talking about? Well, it starts with a conscious shift in perspective. It's about moving from a mindset of what's wrong with them to what can I appreciate about them, even with their quirks. Yes, this is going to take some conscious awareness. So the first step is acknowledging that your partner is human. They have flaws, just like you do. But that's okay. Acceptance isn't about condoning or agreeing with the harmful behavior, but about recognizing their humanity and individuality. So here's where I plug in the reality that if we learn to separate people from what they do, we can have more patience and understanding. We've all heard the saying, find out where a person came from. Now, you don't need to know why to excuse their behavior, but it gives you insight as to why a person may behave in a certain manner in certain situations. So the way we start to do this is by identifying what we consider to be an imperfection and then reframe it. Think about something that your partner does that sometimes irritates you or all the time irritates you. If you know their backstory, it may be easier, but you don't have to know what that is in order to do this exercise. Now, with that imperfection in your thoughts, can you reframe it? Is their messiness a sign of their relaxed nature or creativity? Is their quietness a sign of thoughtfulness or a good listener? Our activity for this week is to pick one imperfection that you've been fixating on and try to find a positive spin or an underlying quality that you do appreciate. For example, if they're always late, perhaps it's because they're deeply engaged in what they're doing and they lose track of time, a sign of their passion. We will also focus on strengths, not weaknesses. Instead of dwelling on what they lack, actively seek out and acknowledge their strengths. What do they excel at? What qualities do you truly admire? I heard it said, and believe it to be true, that in the early days of a relationship, people only focus on the 90% of things they agree with in their partner, and they ignore the 10%. The relationship falls apart when they start to focus on the 10% and they ignore the 90%. This is why you'll recognize a lot of therapists when they start asking what brought the two of you together. What they're attempting to do is to get you back to the 90%, and that is a great concept unless that 10% is something critical that should not have been ignored in the beginning. But folks, that's a whole nother episode. Let's not get onto that one. We'll continue here with what we're talking about today. So let's add in some gratitude practice. Make gratitude for your partner a daily practice. It could be as simple as thanking them for a small gesture, complimenting something they did well, or simply acknowledging their presence in your life. When you focus on what you're grateful for, the imperfections, they often just fade into the background. Also, being full of gratitude, it makes it an easier process to move towards the power of empathy and understanding, because embracing imperfections also requires a healthy dose of empathy. Again, try to understand why your partner might do certain things. Their imperfections, as we have said, often stem from their own past experiences, their personality, or even just a different way of approaching life. Let's get better at asking questions. Don't assume. And assuming includes life happens, people's perspectives do change. So just because a person saw and did things a certain way in the past doesn't mean they feel the same way and will do and approach the situation the same. Let me repeat that because too many people miss this. Just because a person saw and did things a certain way in the past doesn't mean they feel the same way and will approach the situation the same. Don't assume. Also, instead of getting frustrated, try asking open-ended questions to understand their perspective. When you do X, what's going on for you? Or can you help me understand why you approach Y this way? We have to always keep and remember your partner has their own journey. Your partner has a unique history and set of experiences that have shaped who they are. Their flaws might be coping mechanisms or deeply ingrained habits. Understanding this can create compassion. And we must always, that's the word, stay aware of the growth mindset. Instead of viewing imperfections as fixed deficits, see them as areas for potential growth, both individually and as a couple. This doesn't mean you're trying to fix your partner, but rather supporting their journey and recognizing that you're both growing and evolving. Now, this brings us to an important aspect in life, and that is the freedom of letting go. What happens when we genuinely let go of unrealistic expectations? Well, we have increased connection and intimacy. When you stop trying to mold your partner into someone they're not, you create a safe space for them to be their authentic selves. This vulnerability, it creates deeper connection and yes, intimacy. It reduces conflict and resentment. Many arguments, they stem from unmet expectations. So by letting go, you'll find less to fight about and less resentment will build. You leave space for more joy and contentment. When you appreciate your partner for who they are, you'll experience more joy and contentment in your everyday interactions. Why? The pressure's off, and you can simply enjoy their company. You'll gain and or increase your mutual respect. Embracing their imperfections shows your partner that you respect them as an individual with all their unique qualities. This builds a foundation of mutual respect, which is crucial for a healthy marriage. You create the gift of unconditional love. Ultimately, embracing imperfections is about moving closer to unconditional love. It's loving someone not for who you wish they were, but for who they truly are. As we keep saying, flaws and all. So now, let's talk about the practical steps to embrace imperfections. A few actionable steps for you to implement this week. Identify one unrealistic expectations. Think about one expectation you have about your partner that might be causing friction. And I want you to consciously work on releasing it. Practice affirming their strengths. Make a point to compliment or acknowledge one of your partner's strengths every day. Even a small, I appreciate how thoughtful you are, can make a difference. Find the gift in a flaw. As we discussed, pick one, perceived imperfection, and try to find a positive, reframe, or an underlining positive quality. Listen with empathy. When a situation arises that usually frustrates you, Pause and try to understand your partner's perspective before reacting. Ask, help me understand why you. Focus on connection over correction. Whoo, this is mine right here. I'm screaming at myself on this one. Because what I am doing in this field, I have to truly stay conscious and aware in this area. Instead of trying to correct or change your partner, prioritize connecting with them and appreciating their presence. Yes, I do have to get on my correction. So embracing your partner's imperfections, it's not about settling. It's about seeing the full, beautiful, and complex person they are. It's about choosing love, understanding, and acceptance over judgment and disappointment. It's about realizing that true perfection in marriage, it isn't about having a perfect partner, but about loving an imperfect person perfectly. So as we close out this episode, here's a thought-provoking question for you to ponder. What if the very things you sometimes find challenging about your partner are actually the unique brushstrokes that make your marriage canvas so rich and vibrant? So thank you for joining me today on Marriage Mastery Simplified. We'll be back next week for another Marriage Builder Sunday episode. Until then, keep building, keep loving, and keep mastering your marriage, one intentional step at a time. So for more exclusive training, deeper dives, behind the scenes content, our books, video series, and the Simplified Uplifters Apparel, that's our online clothing store, make sure you download the Simplify You app today. It's your one-stop shop for all of our resources. Inside Google Play or the Apple Store, it can be found as Simplified You. The U, it stands for Uplifters. So it's Simplified You, the letter U. Or you can use the website at simplifieduplifters.net. That's a duplication of the actual app. Again, that's simplifieduplifters.net. We would also appreciate that's the word, this episode and the podcast itself with those that you know need to hear it. And I want to thank you again for joining me on this transformative Marriage Builder Sunday. And until we reconnect, be kind to yourself. Embrace your journey. Celebrate the incredible, authentic person you are. And most important, remember your power. You are extraordinary.